Hello all, this is a process video to talk about batch converting photos to grayscale, black and white, little nuance about color filters to create some nicer contrast using Photoshop. So I'm going to open Photoshop via the Creative Cloud programs that you guys have access to. So as you I've noticed with your Cal Poly login, you have access to the full Creative Cloud suite with a student subscription. And one of the programs inside that was Adobe Photoshop. And several folks I know in studios are already familiar with Photoshop coming into the program, but here we're going to use some of the more tools focused on photo contrast and, most importantly, I should say also just the batch convert process or the image processor. So as I open the program, I go to the File menu, and under the File menu, you'll notice a series of things are grayed out because I don't have an image open. But if I come down here to Scripts, I can actually use an image processor script. So in this scenario, when I click on Image Processor, I now have the first box I need to deal with is what image or images do I want to use in this process? So I'm going to select a folder of those images. So as I open this one here, you'll notice that I've created a folder for images that I created from the spring when I was in Venice. I got to visit Fondazione Cristinampalia by Carlos Scarpa. And so these are a series of images from my iPhone that I put in a folder of that title. And here they are here, a series of 15 images. And so I can select this folder, click Open. And then as I move to step 2, you'll notice I have a location to save these process images, right? So it can be in the same location, which is a fine way to put this, right? So you could set this up for the purposes of this tutorial and also some organization, maybe some understanding of where my files go, file structure, avoid some digital clutter. I'm actually going to select a folder and I'm going to create one inside the Fondazione folder of images. And I'm just going to call it B-W for black and white photos, right? And now I have that folder created, okay? And then file type here, we're going to stay with JPEG for this particular process video. The images coming out of your smartphones are going to be of good quality, but the idea that we need to have like a raw file at this point is not as important. So we can use the JPEG compression. And then quality of 12 is the highest setting you can have for that. And I think that's great to have as both the defaults, but make sure those are set that way. There are TIFF files, which you guys have used some for your scanning of your hand-drafted images to get really, really detailed and less data loss. But again, for the purposes of this, we're going to stay as a JPEG. And then finally, number 4, my preference is run an action. If you just installed Photoshop, you're only going to have default actions. Over your career, you can add separate ones, ones that are custom to you, but we're just going to use one of the default actions. And then under that, we've got vignette, frame, wood frame, cast shadow, these kind of things are happening. We're going to do custom RGB to grayscale. Okay. And when we run this script, it's going to bring up a channel mixer. And so right here, the final part of this, this particular process video is to show you, as I run through things, I have the ability to choose color filters with black and white. It might seem counterintuitive, those of you who haven't played with black and white film before, but color filters are an essential way to sort of bump up certain aspects of an image. And for the purposes of architecture in a sort of like outdoor field condition, you tend to see yourself gravitate towards maybe a red filter, as you'll see, right? So as we pull down the menu here in this blog post that I pulled up, this is the sort of key sentence as to why. If certain colors in a scene seem too similar, it can make the black and white picture relatively flat and milky, which is actually what we don't want. And from the Common Hour lecture and some of your own interests and things with architecture, you tend to look for a sort of contrast, right? And really sort of bumping up certain values against each other. So a yellow filter is a balance between photographic effect and ease of use, right, is what they're talking about. So it brings out certain clouds in a sky, really good for sort of natural conditions and sort of layers that are happening. Orange filter really penetrates through some haze and really gives sort of really, can give some crispness to things that are a little bit under undervalued. And so again, that idea of pop here, talking about giving flowers pop. And then finally the red filter. And I think you'll find this to be really dramatic, using this with a building against the sky, or a really crisp edge condition. As you see here in these kind of landscape images, a little less subtlety, more of that just crisp silhouette. Again, this building up against the sky, and the sky tends to go very dark in the red filter. So with that brief aside, we can now start to play with the sort of channel in the channel mixer. So this image behind you is actually we're going to use in another process video about perspective correction. But I'm just going to go ahead and run this and say, I'm going to do a red filter, right? And you can already see the sky gets a little darker, edges, certain brightness, certainly the contrast is up from where we were before, right? That was a default photo that I was brought in. And then here is that red filter. And it really feels like I've got a nice edge in that setup, right? So you're going to run this, one of these black and white filters through all of your images. So I'll click OK here. And this is going to keep feeding all the images in my gallery, right, that are there. So again, my red filter that I enjoyed here. And again, as you start to find different values as an author of these images, you'll notice certain things tell different stories, right? So I'm going to end the tutorial here. As you can see, as I'm going to run through this batch conversion, and I'm just going to click OK for now, just to go through as you sort of set up certain elements. And again, depending on what you choose as the author in the image, certain things will pop out. And as I finish off my automation, I found that the green filter works well for some of these interior shots, trying to find a certain depth. Here we go here, through that portal. And again, finally, that red filter really helping that contrast outside. And now that I have this batch condition, just to verify, as I go in here, here's that Fondazione folder I started with. Those were my color JPEGs from my iPhone. And now I've got a black and white folder, and here are all my exported images. So I'm going to end the process video here, and we'll pick back up with how to edit an image to correct for perspective distortion.